My full birth name is Roland Manuel Rosa.
Were you named after anyone?
No, I don't think so. Manuel's my dad's first name, so that's where I got the middle name Manuel from.
And how about you, Noel?
My name is Noel Manuel Rosa, and I got the middle name from my dad as well.
So when and where were you born, Roland?
I was born March 13th, 1963 in Visalia at Cahuilla Delta Hospital. I think it was called Cahuilla Delta Hospital at the time.
Noel?
I was born January 26, 1969, one of the wettest winters on record in Hanford. And I was born in Hanford at the, what was that called? The Sacred Heart Hospital, I think it was. Yeah.
Now, when did your family immigrate to the United States?
So our grandfather on our mom's side, so this is on our mother's side, he came at 15 years old and he was born in 1901. So he came in 1916. Now on our father's side, it's a little bit different because our grandfather came over here as a single man. We don't know exactly what year, but it was about the same time. He started working, kind of established a little life for himself, went back and married our grandmother, and then brought her back to the United States, and then they started their life here. So it was around the same time, around the 20s, yeah.
So both sides of your mother and your father's families both came from the Azores?
Correct.
Same islands?
Different islands.
Which islands?
Yes. So our mother's side was from Terceta, and our father's side was from Pico.
So you both were born in the Central Valley. So which side of the family, your mother's or your father's, established this area here where you are?
This dairy where we are here in Hanford was established by my grandfather on my dad's side. So this was his second dairy. His original dairy was in the Layton Hardwick area. Is that right?
Yeah.
And he actually bought this dairy as a second dairy at an auction. He didn't want to buy it. He didn't intend to buy it. He was bidding on it as a favor to a friend of his, and he ended up buying the dairy. And he sent my dad, my uncle, over here, who were young high school graduates, to come over here and run this second dairy.
And do you know at the time how many cows there were at this dairy when it first started out?
The story goes there was about 50 cows, and they walked them from the Layton area here because this milking barn was better than this was a grade A milking barn, and the milking barn at his home place was a grade B. So in order to sell higher quality milk, they had to have the updated milking barn, which this facility had.
So grade A milk could be sold for fluid, right?
Right.
Grade B milk was for processing only, so it was a higher valued milk. So the upgraded barn allowed them to get a better price for their milk.
So was your family also involved in dairy over in Portugal, or was this something that they started here when they moved here?
The story goes, from what we've been told over the years, that on our father's side, that the majority of those people were whalers, fishermen, and there was even some relatives that had been to San Francisco on whaling ships and had gone back and had furniture in the Azores from the United States. So they were not cattle people. It was more of, on our mom's side, they were more cattle people. Of course, when they immigrated and they didn't speak the language, the opportunity for them was to all milk cows. So the Portuguese people, whether they were cow people in their homeland, when they got here, they milked cows by hand, and that was their opportunity to get started to get jobs and then to start their own businesses.
So now your father and your uncle, they worked over here at this current dairy,
Correct.
right? So does this mean that you grew up here as well on this land?
Yes, we both grew up here. There was 5 kids in our family, 3 boys and 2 girls. We all grew up working here on the farm from a young age. I don't know exactly when. I estimate it somewhere between first grade and third grade, maybe, before school, after school, weekends, Saturdays, Sundays, summers. We worked all the time.
From the time that you were very small?
Yes.
So tell me, because I'm curious, having no background in this, what does a second grader start out doing on a dairy? What kind of work?
Second grader starts out feeding the little calves. Yeah, feeding the little calves and taking the strings or the twines off of the hay bales that feed the cows, and yeah, feeding the babies milk, feeding the babies grain. What else?
Cleaning up, there's always cleanup. So you're washing equipment in the barn, you're washing tractors, you're putting things away, you're all the odds and ends. The young people starting to do a lot of odds and ends things.
So you said that there were 5 of you in your family, 3 boys, 2 girls. Did all of you work on the dairy then growing up, the girls and the boys?
The girls, they didn't do a lot on the dairy. They were more helping mom, and then the boys would help dad. So the girls were the oldest 2, and then the 3 of us were the younger. So yeah, the girls helped mom more with the domestic things, and then the boys did more of the dairy stuff.
Well, with 5 kids, there was a lot of household domestic things to do. So the girls were helping mom, support the family, and the boys went outside and did the cow work.
Well, we're going to talk more about the cow work, so to speak, but I first want to ask you a few questions. I'm imagining that you were fairly close to your grandparents. Can you tell me, did they ever tell you what life was like in the Azores? Any stories they passed down?
My grandfather on my dad's side passed away when I was really young. I'd say maybe 3 or 4 years old. So I didn't really remember him at all. My grandmother on my dad's side at that time had already moved to the coast. So she was living in Pismo Beach, and her English was not really that great. I mean, she could communicate, but the time that we had together, it seemed like she wanted to know more about what we were doing than what her family stories. And then she always wanted to tell me stories about the church, about God, about Jesus, making sure that we knew who we were in relative to the bigger picture.
When you talk about who you are relative to the bigger picture, one of the things that has come out on several of the interviews is just how central the Catholic Church is to the Portuguese community. Would you say that was the sense for you as well, that not only was the church central, but specifically the church was central as Portuguese Americans? Right.
Yeah, the church definitely plays into the heritage, definitely. Big influence. It would be hard to be Portuguese and not be Catholic and put all the pieces together. Yes.
So for someone who isn't Portuguese American, can you tell me how the experience of a Portuguese Catholic is maybe a little different, like festas, the other things? What's kind of unique to that type of celebration, that type of Catholicism?
I don't think that the celebrations and any of that is really unique to the Portuguese heritage, because in Catholicism you have, so we have Our Lady of Fatima, where the Mother of God appeared to these children in Portugal. But then you have Our Lady of Guadalajara, where she showed up in Mexico. Guadalupe. And then you have Our Lady of Perpetual Help, where she showed up in the Philippines. So different cultures have this same type of relationship with the church as the Portuguese. We just happen to be Portuguese, so that's kind of our tilt on the Catholic, but it's all over the world.
So what other ways were Portuguese traditions like observed in your home growing up?
We went to a matanza or two, which is, basically like a pig. You slaughter a pig and you all cut up the meat and you cook it. And we did a few of those. We definitely would go to the Portuguese celebrations, celebrating, the Holy Spirit, and then all those Holy Spirit festivals are in the spring, and then in the fall you have the Our Lady of Fatima celebrations, and so we definitely attended some of those. I mean, I wouldn't say we were the most active in the Portuguese community. We were a little bit more heavy on the work and less on the festivals than a lot of other families. But we definitely were part of the Portuguese community.
Was that important to? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just recall growing up, going back 50 years, our Portuguese community was a lot like the Mexican community is now, where there was Portuguese television stations, there was Portuguese radio, there was a lot more Portuguese speaking people to each other, and you'd heard the language a lot, and you saw a lot of the cultural things in the media, and you don't see that now. The Portuguese immigration wave slowed down and essentially stopped about 30, 40 years ago. And so the people that were here assimilated and Americanized, whereas the Mexican immigration still continues today, although at a slower pace. And so there's more Mexican culture apparent around in our everyday lives that we used to see as Portuguese kids growing up.
Do you perceive that as a loss, or do you just think it was inevitable?
Well, I don't know that that's the right term to say inevitable. It's the amount of immigrants coming in. So whatever group has that influx of immigrants coming in, that's where you're going to see more of that cultural, what do I want to say, influx is more apparent.
Was it important to your parents, you think, that you retain a strong sense of yourselves as Portuguese Americans?
Yeah, I think, our parents would encourage us to maybe marry someone of the same nationality. They encourage that. They'd always say, you need to meet a nice Portuguese girl, and they, it was important to them. But, they had been raised that way. Even though our parents were born here, they had been raised that way by their immigrant parents. And so, as each generation goes on, you hold on to the things of your culture that you think are really important, and that, you want to hold on for the next generation, and you lose a little bit. And we lost the language. My parents did not teach us the language. They didn't want us to learn the language, because when they had gone to school, like our father didn't speak English when he went to school. Even though he was born here, he didn't speak English. So his first year in school was spent learning the language. And, you were looked down upon if you didn't speak English. So he had to learn English in school. So the last thing he wanted to do was teach his kids Portuguese. He wanted his kids to learn English. They also used it as a tool to communicate, because that way the parents could communicate and go right over our heads. And so later on in life, some of us have learned a little bit of Portuguese along the way, and they, to this day, don't really like that. They still want to be able to communicate with one another, about us in front of us. So
the whole time growing up, I thought it was really rude. I thought it was really rude that I felt like they were talking about us behind our back to our face, if that makes any sense. And I thought, man, I'd like to learn that so that I could know what they're talking about. And I don't know, I just had a problem with languages, I guess. I just couldn't, and I still try to pick up words and phrases, and I do a little bit, but mostly I just can't.
You had mentioned that as successive generations go on and become increasingly more Americanized, you kind of hold on to those things that are important and others you let go. what have the two of you held on to? I know that you're both married and you're fathers, you have children. What have you two held on to that you have wanted to bring into your children's lives?
Well, definitely the Catholic faith. Definitely, our kids have participated in the festivals and the parades and all that. So we've definitely held on to the religious aspect.
You know, with me, and my kids are 25, 23, and 21. And it seemed to me like it wasn't so much me trying to teach them specific things, historical or cultural or whatever. It was them asking me and me trying to provide information to them. It wasn't like I was trying to pass anything on specifically. It was like, you know, why do we do this? Why does Grandpa say that? Where did that come from? How does that fit into when you were a kid, and what does all that mean? And so it's more of me trying to explain how these pieces of the puzzle fit together with stories that they've heard or things that they see, rather than me trying to specifically pass on things. So
is it important to you guys that they retain some sense, you think, of being Portuguese?
Yeah, I think it gives them a grounding, a place of who they are, where they're from, where they fit into the universe. And so from that aspect, yes.
I think that we would feel much more strongly since we've never gone back and visited. So what I've noticed is our friends and family that go back to the old country and actually firsthand witness the culture and the traditions and things, they come back just really excited about the culture. And we even have cousins who their kids, who are our kids' ages, come back and they want to learn the language and they want to do everything Portuguese because they've actually gone back and witnessed firsthand. Since we haven't been back there, we kind of have a little bit less of an excitement about the culture than if we had gone back. So someday when we go back, we will probably come back and, you know, be on fire. Right?
Do you plan to go back?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm a little bit older, so I feel a little bit more pressure to go back sooner, I guess. I feel like, you know, I want to go before I'm too old, before it's difficult to travel. But at the same time, I'm still really busy. We're still, you know, in the peaks of our careers here. So it's that push and pull of, you know, of wanting to get away and needing to get away.
So you brought up the push and pull of a career, so we're now going to talk about the business. Did you always know that you were going to stay in the family business, Roland? And then I'll ask you, Noel.
No.
Why did you?
Why did I stay?
Why did you stay?
I stayed. So I went to college and I studied engineering, and I was intent on being an engineer. I wasn't a very good engineer. So I came back, and my older brother, who was here with my dad running the dairy, he decided to buy his own dairy and move to Oregon. So I stuck around to help Dad in the transition period, just to make sure everything was going okay. At that same time, Noel was starting college. So I kind of stayed around, and one thing led to another, and Dad offered me a partnership as he did Noel. And so we saw an opportunity here that I thought was a pretty good one. So I stayed. But growing up as a kid, you know, we worked a lot here, and the work was hard and the hours were long, and that's not very appealing to kids. And so I didn't intend to come back, but I did.
How about you, Noel? What's your story?
My story was a little bit different. I've always had a fascination with business. So I was studying business in college, and I was looking, I like agriculture. I like the fact that it's family oriented, I like the people that we deal with. I like everything about it. And so I was studying agriculture and business, and I was going to do an internship halfway through college. I says, I'm going to go to this internship, and that's when I told my dad, hey, I'm not going to come work this summer because I'm going to go, because, I need to start working towards what I'm going to do when I graduate. So he said, he offered me a deal just like he had offered Roland, and I said, yeah, that's a pretty good opportunity, because if you know anything, if you've ever started a business, and that was the ultimate goal, to have a business. And if you've ever started a business, it's very hard to get the financing and to get started. So if you have someone who has trust in you, which our father did, then he was willing to basically sell us the business without us having to put any capital down, which is very hard to do in the business world. So we saw it as an opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity, probably a better opportunity than this corporation was going to give me, that I was going to go do the internship in. So I stayed and after college came back because it was an opportunity to get started in a business.
So you're working on and living on the same land that your grandfather purchased. I think I read 1949.
Correct.
So you must feel a heck of a connection to this place.
Correct.
Every day you wake up and you see the same land that you saw as little boys.
Well, it's different though, because, and that's, our dad during his career remodeled this facility, and he made it went from being, this just a barn with a bunch of pastures around, to he built corrals and he did things. And then since we've taken over the last 20 years, we've, knocked down that old portion, built new things there, added on. So it is the same place, but it's not. So yes, it's the same land, the same neighborhood, but even the freeway in front of us has changed and the neighbors have changed. So it is the same land, but it's different also. But that being said, you can see the progress of your career. You can see how much things have changed, and it really hits you when you see old photographs.
Because you started out with 50 cows, right, you said? And you have how many now?
So we milk about 1,000 cows. There's about 1,150 total mature cows here. And we've seen it from that 50 cow, one barn, open lot, barbed wire, wooden posts, where we spent years just with a hammer and nails pulling wire, rusty old nails to hold the cows in, to cows getting loose, and crooked dirt roads and weeds all over and old trees that needed to be pulled out. And we've pretty much seen the evolution to where now this is a modern, efficient, functioning farm. And so that's the biggest gratification that I get out of being here on one facility, is to kind of being fast forward 50 years later and saying what we thought was possible that long ago now is what that vision was.
Yeah. When we were growing up, when we started working on the farm as small kids, and while we were growing up, grade school and high school, this was a 200 cow dairy at that point, 200 to 300 cows. And it wasn't until our oldest brother got out of college that he took the leap, or Dad took the leap from like 3 to 400 cows. And so when our dad retired 20 years ago, it was at 500. And so we've doubled. Yeah.
We've done everything along the way. We've laid concrete, put in water pipes, welded top rails, put in cables, pulled out barbed wire, and then we've knocked it down already. We've already built the dairy, knocked it down, rebuilt it better, leveled, moved dirt, and we've completely seen essentially 3 phases of the dairy business, and we're still working on it today. We're still working on improving it.
Well, I know that in 2012, your family began processing your farm's milk in a small creamery, right? That you purchased. So take me through to where you are now where you've got Rosa Brothers milk in Save Marts, in Krispy Kreme, you're winning awards for Best New Product. How did you get the vision to open the creamery, to get into the flavored milk business, and where are you going next?
Well, one of the first things that happened to us was this little 2-lane highway became a elevated 4-lane, what do they call it? Expressway. And we knew that there was going to be a lot more traffic through here, and there was a lot more eyes being able to see what we were doing here. So we thought that it would be a good idea for us to offer tours. So that kind of got the ball rolling on us thinking of the possibilities that brought us. Instead of looking at it as being a negative thing, we tried to look at what the possibilities would be. And the processing our own milk and the creamery was kind of the next step of, okay, well, if we offer tours, we should have products, we should start to look at maybe processing our own milk, and what would that look like? Would we make cheese? Would we make butter? What would we do? And then we started kicking around ideas, and there was a lot of other things going into the dairy business of in California in general and our future profitability.
Yeah, California's not a good place to make commodity milk because the costs of operating are so high. So we realized we would actually lose our way of life here and lose our ability to dairy if we didn't add value to our product, if we continued to be commodity milk producers. So we started looking for a way to add value to our product to keep up with inflation in California.
And among the ways you added value, the glass bottles factored into that. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. So glass bottle. So as a consumer, you're a consumer, you walk into the store and you see milk, and how do you decide which milk you're going to buy? And then, so most consumers look at it and they say, well, that milk, that brand of milk is the same as that brand of milk, is the same as that brand of milk. They're all in cartons or they're all in plastic jugs. And so then the first thing you do is, well, I don't know what the difference is between these milks, so I'll just get the cheapest one. So we said, what kind of package can we use that'll make the milk better, that'll keep the milk colder, make it last longer shelf life, preserve the flavor, because glass doesn't impart a flavor, but cardboard does and plastic does. So we found this package that was superior to anything else in the store, and we realized if we put that in the store, then the consumers will recognize that's a better product and we're willing to pay a little bit more. We have to get a little bit more for our milk because we are in a small, inefficient creamery that we we don't do 10 semi-loads a day. We're only doing a partial of a load a day. So we have to have a little bit higher cost. So we're able to differentiate with that glass bottle, and it does. It really stands out on the shelf. People like the fact that they can take that bottle home, drink the milk, and then take that bottle back to the store. We pick it up, wash it, and refill it and take it back. So it's good for the environment. It's good for the overall flavor of the milk. It's good for the shelf life. It's really a good package. It's inconvenient for us as manufacturers, but that's okay. It's one thing that we can do with our one farm.
Well, speaking of the flavor of the milk, how did you get into your flavored milks?
Well, we traveled across the country and looked at different farms that were doing different things. I went to Penn State and took an ice cream making course and learned how to make ice cream at Penn State. So we do make the ice cream and the glass bottle milk. And while I was there, I met a guy, and he was an ingredient supplier. And I told him, hey, we need some ingredients. We're starting this milk and ice cream company. And he said, okay, well, I can give you, 15 or 20 different chocolates, different grades and things. So we went through and tasted all these different chocolates and all these different things. And then I said, I went to another state and I had this certain flavor. Do you have that? And he says, yeah, I can get you that flavor. And then he said, I said, well, what else do you have? And he says, well, I've got this flavor and this flavor. So as we've been requested flavors, if he has them, we get them. And then the last few flavors we've actually developed ourselves. They don't have you can't buy a mix or whatever. So we've actually developed those ourselves now that we have more experience now. We've been in 8 years. So now we can actually play around in the test kitchen and make flavors ourselves.
So I imagine you don't have a difficult time at all finding people who will volunteer to be your...
Right.
So how many flavors of milk do you have now?
We have 7 flavors of milk. That's flavors, and then we have the different butterfat contents, the whole and the 2% and the non-fat. And then we also have lactose-free, and then we have 7 flavors as well. So
as you look toward the future then, for the company, what do you aspire to accomplish? I mean, you guys are already, you're just doing so much.
We aspire to sustainability. And sustainability to us means to right-size the dairy to the amount of milk at the maximum potential for our sales. So our goal is to have those lines intersect where the increased production peaks and we bring the production of our dairy to equal to where right now we process about 20 to 30% of our milk that we produce, and the rest is sold to Land O'Lakes Cooperative. So the idea is to have all the milk we produce here being processed through our creamery and sold under our brand.
So do you see yourselves introducing new products? Or are you going to stay with the flavored milks and the ice cream? Do you see getting into cheese eventually? Or?
You never say never in this business, right? Because, it's a consumer-driven thing. So, yeah, if, everybody in the country wants Rosa Brothers cheese, we'll make cheese, Right now, the milks and the ice creams, we're continually bringing out new flavors. We were doing some R&D on a new flavor this last Saturday of ice cream. And so, we'll continue, like any food manufacturer, you discontinue the slow items and you bring in new items. So, we'll continue the innovation. For a while there, it looked like we might do something with yogurt. Yogurt was getting very popular and we were looking at that. Now we're starting to see a trend in the decline of the consumption of yogurt. So maybe that was just a little hiccup, for a few years. When the Greek yogurt came in, it was very popular, and now the popularity seems to be waning a little bit. So, but yeah, we'll continue to go with the flow and where consumers want. We recently came out with coffee creamers. Coffee creamers are very popular right now. We make 3 flavors. We make, we make 4. We make plain half and half creamer. We make vanilla. We make hazelnut, and we make salted caramel. So you put that salted caramel in your coffee and it tastes like a caramel macchiato. And I mean, it's really good stuff, really good products. They look very nice in the glass bottle. We have a nice collar that goes with it and lets you know what's in there and what flavor it is. And so that's an innovative thing that we were able to do. It matched up with our dairy product lineup, and it's been doing pretty well, yeah. And we've had it less than a year, so.
Products are available in how many stores in California now?
800. So that being said, probably over half of those are convenience stores or gas stations where they have our little single serving, 12-ounce milks, flavored milks, and then, the donut shops and the bakeries and the delis and that kind of thing. Probably, over half of them are convenience stores, and then the rest are markets, your Vons, your Save Marts, your independent grocers, meat markets, those kind of things.
So you're the 3rd generation to be working the dairy. Will there be a 4th? Have any of your children expressed an interest in going into the business?
I don't know. My oldest 2 Girls are college graduates, and they're both currently working, not working here on the farm. My youngest is a junior in college at Cal Poly, and he's studying ag business. Where that's going to take him, I don't know. He currently hasn't expressed any interest in dairy production. I don't know where his interest taking his ag business degree is going to go. Maybe.
And my kids are younger yet. So my oldest is a year younger than his youngest. And so he's at the Air Force Academy, and all he thinks about is airplanes. So don't know about him. Then I have a daughter. She's a senior in high school. Right now she wants to be a dentist. And then we have a freshman in high school and a sixth grader, and they're very non-committal at this point. So
There's a chance.
there's a chance. They're very non-committal. There's always a chance.
Okay, so I just have a couple more questions, and we're going to circle back to the Portuguese American aspect of it. We'll go first with Noel, and then we'll go to Willem. To what extent do you think being Portuguese American has shaped you professionally and personally?
You know, I don't consider myself to be Portuguese American. I consider myself to be American, and of Portuguese descent, yes. But I don't consider myself Portuguese American. I consider myself American. So and maybe that's because I don't speak the language, but I think it's definitely, shaped me religiously, so that I'm very comfortable with our faith, and I understand it, and it plays in well with the culture. So I think it's helped me religiously. I think it gives me a sense of community here in the Central Valley, because there are so many other people of Portuguese descent. You have a certain bond with those people, even if you don't know them that well. You might know their cousins or whatever. So, the Portuguese Americans, the Portuguese people of Portuguese descent tended to have large families. So we do have a lot of cousins around, extended families, which is kind of interesting, even if you don't see them on a regular basis. When you go to an event or something, you'll recognize, your third cousin's kids, and, your so-and-so's kids. And so, it's kind of like my big Greek wedding. It's kind of like that. The Portuguese community is like that, every year when the festivals kick up or whatever. So, it's fun. I wouldn't say it shapes my everyday life and has a big influence on my everyday life, but it is fun.
How do I think of it? I think of being Portuguese as being part of one of the pillars that holds me up, I guess. So I think of myself as American. I think of myself as a Californian. I think of myself as a Catholic. I think of myself as a dairyman. I think of myself as Portuguese. So it's part of that whole structure that holds up my identity, I guess. So I wouldn't say it's any more than any of the other parts, and I wouldn't say it's any less than any of the other parts, but it's a significant, necessary part of my identity. That's how I think of it. And I identify when I meet other Portuguese people. I look at them and I say, well, I know where that person's from. I know that history. We have that commonality, and a lot of those people that I interact with also have a lot of those other things in common too. Being Catholic and being in agriculture and being in California, and I rarely meet people that aren't Californians. So when I meet other Portuguese people, I usually have a lot of other things in common with them too. So it's a nice part, it's a central part, but it's not the only part.
I want to thank you guys very much for this time and for the interview. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that I should have asked you that you could think about that you want to? We good?